Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out today on this rainy, snowy and icy day. We'll get a nice view of it on the windows behind the talk here as the night goes by. But I just want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Erin Bell. I'm the operations director here at Gerber Hart. For those of you who have not been here before, Gerber Hart is an LGBTQ library and archives. We are the largest in the Midwest. We have, over 20,000 books and well over 150 collections in our archives, and we've been here since 1981. And it's absolutely a privilege and a joy to be in this space, to be able to work and serve the public and protect queer history, especially in a time like we are living now. It has been an absolute joy to work with Hal on bringing this exhibit to life. I hope all of you have had a chance to step into the space, but we'll have it open through the end of the event tonight at 7. So at any point after Hal's done, go check it out. It's beautiful. It'll also be up through the end of April, so you'll have lots of opportunities to see it again, bring more folks in. Yeah, I just want to say a few words, introduce Hal. Hal's been with Gerber Hart. Do you know how long he's been with Gerber Hart?
I think it's 10 years.
10 years. Give a round of applause for that, please. That's so awesome. And I remember when I started volunteering about 7 years ago, I remember running into you were the treasurer. It's like, wow, treasurer of the board. And I remember us having a conversation once, and like, yeah, well, Rose, and I don't know why I said something about like, yeah, maybe I'd be interested in joining the board someday, and you just pointed, you were like, noted. And that was sweet, but I was like, wow, someone believes in me. So yeah, it's always great to see you, Hal, and I'm so happy that you were able to help us create this new exhibit. So without further ado, let me introduce Hal.
So before I start, Kyle, Mike, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because as Erin pointed out, I tend to talk with my hands a lot, which makes it really hard to use a microphone. So, I'll go without, I'll project, let me know if I start mumbling or something. So, I did first, as we start, want to acknowledge first the friends that have come out. Thank you so much. The Gerber Hart staff, that'd be Erin, Jen, and Michael, who've been insanely helpful during this whole process. And again, an amazing pleasure to work with over the last apparently 10 years. I don't think any SAIC faculty is here tonight. Okay. But shame on them. And also Gerber Hart volunteers helped with the installation for Sarah particularly was amazingly helpful, but also here Thomas and Larry were great helps on the installation. We finished early. I wanted to call out my boss in my day job, George Langford, who has been enormously supportive during my entire journey with SAIC as a photographer, as an artist. Sorry to shame you like that, because I can feel it, the discomfort coming off the blue waves. Sorry. And of course, my husband, Channing Green. So as we go through this, and by the way, I'm going to try really, really hard. It's scheduled for 40 minutes. I'll try to, I talk fast. So, there are several threads that we'll be talking about. I promise we'll tie them together by the end. May not make sense for a moment. We'll get there. Also, when I do this, there's random things that I can never predict that kind of I get choked up. So, yeah, expect that. That'll be fun. Come on. Oh. All right, a little bit of background. I was born and raised in Texas in 1963, mostly Houston, but my family was kind of from, oh, you know what, that does not look good against the screen. I'll point. Born in the top of the Golden Triangle in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, mostly raised in Houston, but my family was from Abilene, the Valley, that being Harlingen, McAllen area, Edinburgh. You may have been hearing about that with some of the border stuff over the last few years. I went to Rice University, a whole mile from my parents' house. Got my BA in English back in '86 and went back for a BFA in photography in '89. Big gap in education, then did my MA in literature at Northwestern in 2010, did my MS in computer science in 2014, finally getting the credential for the job I'd been paid to do for the last 30 years. But thanks to COVID shocking the social system, and an acute awareness of my age, and what I really wanted to do with the rest of my life, and again, an incredibly supportive boss. I am now a recent grad of SAIC's MFA in photography program this past May. Now, a lot of my exposure to Abilene, which we'll be talking about a lot, was I went there basically about twice a year for my, throughout until I was, I think, graduate in high school. We still had graduate things, but twice a year for Christmas and one summer, every summer, where we'd go, my brother and I, to visit my grandmother on a Trailways bus from Houston to Abilene. Parenting was very different in the 70s. But I spent really a lot of time there. But it's where my father's side of the family was from. Oh, those are out of order. These are all places I went to school. But, well, they weren't. That was just campuses. Anyway, but when I started my freshman year in college, was right about the same time that AIDS started. That we were hearing about it as a gay cancer. This is the infamous article from the New York Times that was seen as the first public acknowledgement that something was happening. That was in July of 1981. So it was kind of like, oh, you're coming out as a gay man. Welcome. Here's AIDS. Awesome. But it kind of was a thread throughout my entire coming out process. Now, as an older adult, I started working with various LGBTQ organizations, really out of survivor's guilt, because at the time, though I was 18, 19 years old, I don't feel that I did enough. I've always felt that. So working with, I was a co-founder of the Chicago Dragons gay rugby team here in town, the LGBTQ Victory Fund, a PAC for gay candidates, working with that. But I was reading at one point this book, Stand By Me, by Jim Downs, that's what it was. A series of 4 essays, one of which was about the upstairs lounge fire. Here's what happens for the first time. So, the upstairs lounge, massive fire, killed, again, as you can see, 29 people, very horrific, in New Orleans. But when I was coming out in Houston, that had basically been forgotten. In fact, I had almost forgotten about it because there was a very tight social tie between Houston and New Orleans at the time. That's kind of where we went on weekends, things like that. But it was just not part of our conversation. And that struck me as like, oh, what other parts of the conversation have we forgotten about, have been erased? Which is why I decided to start volunteering here at the Gerber Hart. Again, first as a volunteer, again, I think it was 10 years ago, somewhere 9 or 11, somewhere in there. And then I was recruited to be on the board as the treasurer for 3 or 4 years, and then volunteer again until grad school started. And as Aaron alluded, it is now as important as it's ever been that we preserve the archives and the history of our people, if you will. This is just from this week, that NASA workers were told to drop everything and spend their time scrubbing mentions of women in leadership, indigenous people, and environmental justice from the web, all relating to, all from the NASA website. So, that's some background. So, shifting, different thread, artistic influences, things. I started getting into my practice really deals with the intersection of image and text. Now, it totally came out of being raised with comic books. This is my absolute favorite in the world still, by the way. Legion of Superheroes. This was the first issue I ever got. But that expanded over the years as I realized the possibilities of marrying the two forms. Actually, ultimately, my thesis at Northwestern was about the depictions of truth in the graphic novel. Now, the last of which being Fun Home. Now, as a photographer, my influences were, this is a piece by one of my professors at Rice, Peter Brown. Amazing work with the American plains, but I can clearly see an aesthetic connection with my work, particularly with Abilene, that you can again see in that the exhibit room. But also, I was particularly taken with artists, and this is the late 80s, that were doing this intersection of image text. Barbara Kruger, you may be seeing her work recently because of the brand Supreme, basically stealing her work. Dwayne Michaels, now he started doing writing actually on the print, handwritten on the print, and telling stories, narratives with this form. I was particularly caught up with that. He'd been working since the 70s, as this piece was actually back in 74. And I was fortunate that Jim Goldberg's Rich and Poor came out while I was in college. A seminal work, again, the subjects of the portraits writing their reactions to the pictures and their lives on the prints in their own handwriting, and immediacy with their existence as people. There's no intermediary in there. So I was, when I was trying to finish my BFA, as a fairly newly out gay man, in the throes of AIDS, I said, okay, what am I going to talk about? Well, I am going to teach straight people around the world about AIDS, like I had anything to educate anyone, because again, 20-year-old kid. So I started telling the story of Joe and Dean. Now this was a project that evolved under the mentorship of my advisor, Jeff Winningham. This is Dean, frankly my absolute favorite image from this project, but I still didn't really know what to do with it. This one aside, they were not engaging images. And I was struggling. And I was calling them one day to set up a point for the next shoot when Dean answered the phone and told me Joe had died the night before. And that, well, to be quite honest, my first reaction was, oh shit. What is going to happen to my project? I was like, that's done. Okay. But as I really thought about it more, I was like, wait a minute, right? This was never about me teaching anyone anything. Don't know why I suddenly had that revolution, but it was right on. But what it was me coming to understand what AIDS was. To come to my own understanding of what was happening around me, but mostly to people older than me. I just kind of missed the window, if you will. Yeah, survivor's guilt. But I started realizing at that moment also, though, that for me at least, photographs were not enough to tell the story I needed to tell. My experience, my relationship to AIDS, and finally, I can't photograph it. I had to tell the story. Sorry, if you can't read this, literally the closing thing of this, my thesis piece was, I can't photograph this. For several reasons, among them being that there was no way of depicting what's going on other than the most torturous of metaphors, that it is a social space, that I cannot bring my camera into Dean's grief at this moment, because what kind of asshole am I at that moment? But finally, I can't fucking deal with this anymore. I can't photograph this. I had to step away. Right, 3. So, for other reasons, okay, a misguided embrace of the Catholic Church because of family, I drove out to Abilene to take my grandmother to Mass. So she had this thing where she would, got her talking about anything, she would just talk. And we stop at this intersection, Butternut Street and 6th. And one particular thing about her saying anything, she would read signs and then comment on it incessantly. So, we come up to this intersection, and if you can't read it, Butternut Street. So she sees this like, Butternut Street, our old stomping grounds. Yeah, so our house used to be down the street here, and then when Mommy and Daddy died, we let Bill, her brother, live here, and then when he died, well, then we sold it, and they tore it down, it's not there anymore. And I thought, wait, when he died, you kicked out his wife and kids? Unless there weren't any. And wait a minute, okay, quick math. So he was probably around this age and during the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Unmarried dude living Grandma, was Uncle Bill married? Now, He was a homo. That's a homosexual. Now, of course, I very quickly was like, okay, do I ask her any more questions and possibly out myself? Or, oh wait, this is my grandmother. You just sit back and let that train go to the end of the line. Now, and so I got a couple more things from that story. But when I got back to Houston, went to talk to my dad. Oh wait, at this point, I had been out to my father and stepmother for 5 years. Never heard about this dude. So went to talk to my dad. It's like, what? Why didn't you tell me this? And he just shrugged. And then I started asking myself, like, well, why didn't he leave? Let me read something. Abilene is a shitty little town in the West Texas. There is nothing here. I've got a kind of couple stories over the years, but very small. Like like one point was like, well, he had friends, like ladies they would play cards with. That's about it. And he drank a lot. So he died when I was 4 months old. He died when he was 59. The age I am about now. I'm 61. When I did this project, I was 60, 59, somewhere in there. He died alone of alcoholism in the VA hospital, cirrhosis of the liver. So, when some people would say, it's like, well, you must have been happy there. It's like, again, died alone of alcoholism at 60. So I'm thinking not. Now, there used to be this trope of a long-lost relative, that the mysterious uncle that vanished, and you're the only inheritor. You poke at that a little bit. They died without a will or any children. It's like, but my mother used to mention that a lot. And really, you think about that for just a second. You just poke at that the slightest bit. It's like, oh. That was the gay relative that had been separated from the family because you assholes didn't talk to them. Obviously, I got a little bit bitter in there. But I also became very aware that this could be me. This could be my story. Again, because of the parallels of the age and the like. But if I had just been born a little bit sooner, that absolutely could have been me. My dad did say, like, one point, like, when I'm trying to dig through and pull some of these things up, he said, well, everyone's forgotten. I'm like, okay. But you guys have set up a scholarship at the University of Houston with your names, so you seem to be trying to do something about it. And, yeah, we're all forgotten, but hopefully after like 50 years or something like that, not like 2. So, going to Abilene. This is my first project at SAIC. I did it as straight image and text. I started going back to the places that I had been and really trying to work with the, trying to answer the question, like finding something like, why didn't he leave? What was there? And this, by the way, this is the train station he would have taken to get out of town if he had bothered to leave. On the street. This is what used to be the family farm, by the way. It is now the municipal airport, eminent domain. And I went to his gravesite a couple times. I'm pretty sure that I'm the only one who has left flowers for him. Certainly in the last 40 years. If my grandmother ever did, but I kind of doubt it, so possibly I'm the only one ever. The only one remembering this gay man. So, further work into Bill in Abilene. The first series of images along the wall. Because I knew virtually nothing about Bill, I started going through the newspapers, trying to find anything I could about him, about my family. And newspapers at the time, especially small town, they had a lot. They, like anything you were worried about, like with, I guess in the old days of Facebook having too much info. Oh, so much. Take a look at that collage in there. Basically, it was from 1927 to 1964. One thing that's recently, like as I was putting it up, noticing it again, because there's always more. The listing of all the college students that are home for winter break. And it's like, hey, if you were trying to stalk your high school girlfriend, she's here. But again, the newspapers can be amazing sources for archival information because of that depth of detail that they have. There are tons of online scans of these, mostly through, hey, surprisingly, newspapers.com. There you go. Easiest URL ever, I guess. Though as a technologist in my day job, I do have to be very aware that the only thing that actually endures is paper. Remember that. I've gone through 5 or 6 different file formats or storage devices since I've been working, so don't count on your drives. But in there, I found this page about Abilene Little Theater. And in it, this is the only picture I've ever found of Bill. The only one. Yeah. Now, I also have an enduring fascination with a sense of place, which I think a lot of us, particularly Chicagoans, can identify with. We have sort of this, like, oh, wait, like if it's a movie saying, she drove the wrong way to go to the airport on Lakeshore Drive, things like that. We are so hyper aware of this city. But the same way, the maps for me speak to a marker of a physical location that endures. Yet there's temporal elements, things like cities that weren't there before, or grew, or the like. They're also kind of beautiful. So with this series, as I'm trying to digest Bill's story, I wanted to also fully integrate text and image. The stuff before, those have been image, text, like we spring together as a single element. With the few things that I knew about his life at the time, I really haven't learned that much more. Some of the elements in here, I used a paper that is very ink absorbent, so I still stuck with the handwritten aspect. But also, as we go through these flowers, these vines, they started as a decorative element. Because my stepmother mentioned when they were cleaning out my grandmother's apartment that they found this address book where Bill had painted little flowers as a gift for her. And, of course, threw it away. So I never saw it. So that's just my guess. But in this series, as I'm telling the story, the flowers grow and grow until they become a cage trapping him in that town. Many of the vines, by the way, follow any of the highways that you might have taken to get out of there. In this last piece about Kirby Park, which is not part of the original 6, specifically I was like, where would he have met people? okay, no gay bar. Cruising in the park is really, literally the only thing I can come up with, other than that. So I went to Kirby Park to, yeah, there's a lot of cruising there. It is, which is amazing because it's a very flat, it's basically a lawn, a 5-acre lawn, no trees, nothing. It's like, don't know where you're doing it, dudes, but okay. And in this piece, that actually is a hookup. I did figure out why they're doing it. They're doing it in each other's cars. So there you go. Discretion. I went back to the Abilene story because the Abilene images, because in the next piece, which is you'll see in the videos, there are, because I only knew a little bit, I had to fill in what I imagined his life would have been like, and also at certain points. I did find out at one point, for example, that he did have a relationship, a guy that apparently my family knew, Joe Ernest, which, because they happened to, my father remembered this guy's name, I was able to find out, go through the, again, Abilene newspapers, for Joe Ernest, excellent optical character recognition they did. And, oh, that was, yeah, he went back to his wife. So, yeah, his obituary, he's with his wife, and they talk about his kids and all that. It's like, well, obviously that didn't work out. So I wrote it because I only had those tent poles, if you will. I had to write fiction to come to a story around those. So the subtitles, and if you turn the volume of the TV in there, it's those stories. Begin. I need to fill in the blanks with that. Now this is often used, these use of archives as a launch point for art. A lot of it local here in Chicago. James Hoskins, who is, I've never met him in person, I don't think he's here tonight. No, someone, okay. So James Hoskins recently did like work with Latitude. He exhibited here until a week or so ago. Worked at the Chicago Reader, and yeah, that did. So hopefully he can land. A guy I know through a college friend, David Kadeski, one of the local storytellers, did a fantastic opera, suitcase opera he calls it, of an archive that he found of a mysterious gay man, an archive of pictures and letters. So built a full musical piece from that. And these efforts, these making art from archives, they're a pushback against the erasure of queer stories, of our stories. Putting us into the artistic conversation explicitly. Not, well, Michelangelo might have been gay. We used to hear that 30 years ago. But just making very explicit, like, nope, this is what's going on. I'm in love with another man. Period, end of story. But that's a new thing for us. And archives can help us tell those stories. So, kind of related to it, another project for school I was doing for a photo studies class about the way that gay men record their lives in photo albums, particularly. Aaron gave me access to the collection of Party and G. So these were found at an estate sale and donated to Gerber Hart, and we don't know anything about them. Except where they live, and we could see that throughout, you can sort of follow at least their relationships. You can't really get a story out of these like I was hoping originally, like in terms of a plot. But you can see a fuller view of their lives, as like an extended portrait, if you will. Both men were very close to both of their families. But how do we even know their names? Because of the images. We know that because they were meticulous about writing the dates on the back of their pictures, that this was the early 60s. There's about a 7-year span we have of them. They did it like 3/4 of them, which was fantastic. We know where they lived, and we can do more research to find the specific addresses. That's a project on books for us. Walking distance, obviously, from the Shakespeare statue in Lincoln Park. We know we can find that house. But how do we know their names? Birthday cakes. Several collections. We know the names of these mysterious men because of names written on birthday cakes. Unfortunately, at a certain point, we all get a little bit anxious about the number of candles, so we don't have the age. As awesome as that would be. But we know in this case that Bernie, this is one of his cakes here, that he was either a hairdresser or a barber because there's a comb and a pair of scissors on the cake. Great way of getting additional information. So we can make sure that they aren't forgotten, that we can resurrect at least part of their memory. But a sad undercurrent, and as you can see if you look at the originals in the case, you'll see that these are all Polaroids. Why do you use Polaroids instead of the much easier and cheaper dropping them off at the drugstore? Discretion. Because at this time we were still illegal. And even though there is nothing salacious about any of these pictures, we can't risk strangers seeing that we were gay. And so it's protection. So we're hiding ourselves, or having to hide ourselves, as well as society hiding and denying our existence. So it's just taking that erasure and just, for self-preservation, hammering it down even further. Now, Bernie and G's families, if we can ever find them again, were great with them. Great relationships with the kids, with the brothers and sisters, with the parents. Again, we're inferring these relationships from the images. But usually, our families, Bill's family, are denying us. They're hiding us. And their story is lost. So, Smilin Through. What the hell is that? So if you didn't see this, the big piece against the far wall. 110 prints, by the way. It's a lot. Remember this page? Where I found the picture of Bill? The Little Theater will present Smilin Through on an outdoor setting at 8:15. This was in July of 1930. July in the desert. So, I mean, it's like the headline alone, like, what is going on here? So, went back and down. So, Smilin Through. Okay, first off, do I have it? This is it. Still available from Samuel French. By the way, this was written, first produced in 1919. I'm going to bitch about Samuel French here for a second. So well out of copyright. However, if you order 2 copies, Samuel French will send you a note saying, hey, looks like you're about to produce this. You better pay us. Assholes. Anyway, this was a Gothic romance. If you can read it up here, this was a, quote, romantic comedy. Yeah, reading it, the only comedy aspect in here, maybe, is a mocking of the Irish. But there is murder and ghosts and the devastating psychological impact of World War I. It's a lot. So the play actually did pretty well. Also, it was written by, still credited, again, Samuel French knew better when they published this, by Alan Langdon Martin. It was not. It was 2 women who wrote the play basically to get jobs for themselves. So yet another piece of erasure, again, out of self-preservation, kind of like George Sand, things like that, trying to get published. It did fairly well. It got pretty popular enough that there were 3 films adapted from this. Silent, 1921. Sorry, 1922. Black and White Talkie, 1932. Color, or Technicolor Musical, in 1941. I believe, Aaron, you said that is, what was the D word you said?
I said diegetic.
Diegetic musical. Meaning, it wasn't like Mary Poppins or Cabaret or anything like that, where it kind of slides into song. Well, Cabaret's a bad example, I guess. But basically, it's not a musical where a plot point, characters just suddenly burst into song, singing in the rain, things like that, and then kind of go back to the action. It is when Jeanette MacDonald walks into a room where there's a piano, she'll just sit down and start singing. Get up and go back to the play. That's it. Of these 3, by the way, the Silence is actually far and away the best version. Just absolutely delightful. And I never want to watch silent movies before this, and now I'm addicted. But there was also a title song, which was also a thing, selling sheet music back in the early teens and the like, because it didn't have record stores sending stuff out like that. So I found, though, ultimately at least 25 different recordings of the title song, Smilin Through, which is, I think, where the play got the names. They were kind of synergistic marketing, including versions by Bing Crosby. And, why am I blanking for this? This is going to be really embarrassing. My gay card is about to be revoked. Judy Garland. And now you can see why I was concerned about that. So, yes, insanely popular, and then completely forgotten, except for apparently some drama schools out there will teach it, and insanely movie-addicted watchers like Rod there. But again, because it's out of copyright, I think that's why drama schools will sometimes use it. Anyway. So I came across that, but I was coming up second half of my second year, rapidly approaching at SAIC, and I needed to try to find a photo project. I've been really leaning into the writing side of my practice for time reasons, things like that. It's like, no, I'm in the freaking photography program. Now, granted, Nobody cares at SAIC. Nobody cares. I had every advisor tell me, he was like, oh, don't worry about that. You know, it's like, okay, I care. I came here for photography. This, by the way, this is the Signor House. This is where the play was produced in 1930. Now, when I first saw this, because it was like, well, two things struck me. One, they published in the paper that it's produced at the Signor House, as if everyone knows what that is. The second was when I looked at this on Google Maps before I went to Abilene and took this picture. It's like, wait, they did it on the front lawn? What the hell? Because there were 450 people at this show. Like, were they standing in the street? Well, it turns out they have a huge backyard. They weren't home, and so I went there. But I'm trying to find a photo project, a photo-based project. Basically, my taking images. My advisor at the time, Mr. Oliver Sand, some of y'all know him. We were talking about it, and just the weirdness of this. Even the apostrophe in smiling, not smiling, smiling, just seemed so informal and odd. And so Oliver said, "You have to restage this, like, or make a movie from it." Like, okay, it's December of my second year. I've got like the show in. No, I've never directed anything in my life. And also, I'm supposed to be taking pictures. But then I thought, wait, well, what if I photograph the play? So, I was kind of working that, I was like, what if I make it look like a movie? Like Cindy Sherman did. And for those of y'all who are not familiar with her work, this is from her Untitled Film Still series back in 1978, where she did a series, fairly long, and this is what made her mark, of imagined scenes from movies that don't exist. Like, okay, there's an idea. But what if I do an entire movie? A love story. The one that Bill couldn't be in because it was 1930 in Abilene. What if I do this as a tribute to the ghost of a man I never met? So, because I'm asked this, I need to clarify and make absolutely sure if you did it already. What you see there, those are stills from a movie that does not exist. Completely made up. Why did I qualify the title as 2024? Because of the 3 movies before. To make it very clear, this is now. So I'm using, even though they're still photographs, I'm using the vocabulary of film, the visual vocabulary of lobby cards. Oh, and by the way, anybody recognize this despondent man in the cemetery here? The star is shaking his head. I started using the aspect ratio of widescreen formats. It actually, longer story, it happened as an accident early on. It's like, I love this. So I kept on using the widescreen format. And I pulled in elements from all 3 movies as well as the play itself. The bar scene where another, he's going to shake his head? Another cast member is confronting the murderer. That was in the 1921 version. I also used a washed out, desaturated color. I did not want to go to full black and white, but to evoke an old black and white esque look. Everyone is dressed in earth tones. There are no bright colors anywhere. I also included explicit references to gay life. Oh, look, yet another star. We have several in audience tonight. So this is the magic hedge, who some in the audience may know what this is, others don't. So this is the, I needed a place for one scene with trees, and yeah, it's like, well, they have trees there, and oh, this is the most, one of the, actually the most infamous cruising ground in Chicago. It's the while Magic Hedge is the nickname, this is the Montrose Beach Bird Sanctuary. It is actually a very lovely place. But you will see very active cruising and birders at the same time. But it's a lovely spot. Another element that I used was I was talking to a gay photographer in Canada, and he told me about how gay business owners in the beginning of the 20th century would use statuettes of David as indicators that this was, in our modern parlance, a safe spot. Barbers, haberdashers, things like that. Now, I'm not really sure if this is true or not, and if anybody knows, don't tell me. Because I don't want to break the spell. Because I love this idea so much. And in the original play, which weirdly, this and the one or two of the versions, he's, John, the main character, is trying to summon the spirit of his dead lover, holding a marionette to the moonlight. So I just, yeah, 1919? So I swapped that out for David. Some other, oh, wait, what is it? Okay, and finally, because I had to tell the story, I had to tell the plot, I'm realizing, okay, I'm actually going to have writing. Whoops! For my photo focus project, I in fact needed text. Like, all right. So I leaned on silent movie intertitles to move the text along. And it was actually, it was a point where the interdisciplinary focus of SAIC was great. And I was doing double time in the writing department. I could basically test my narrative in that seminar. It's like, does this still make sense? And identify plot holes. And wait, who is that character? Which, by the way, where I got the cast pictures from the beginning, which was also great because I was able to explicitly credit the actors who did an enormous, fantastic job for me. Because obviously, I paid nothing because I was a student. And but they were, it was the most fun that I had probably the entire time of organizing the shoots and working with everyone. Also, big shout out to Northwestern University Law School for allowing me to use one of their rooms for a number of the scenes. Here, gorgeous space, and then the happy ending. And yeah, I can have I had another reason that okay, I have to talk about it right now. This image, actually it's not in any of the movies, but I had to include it because in the 1931 version, there's young lovers and then there's reunited older lovers and the ghost, and the young lovers, it was all done outdoors in a garden area. And the young lovers are reunited, and they're coming in to the garden, bursting through the gates, where moments before, John has died, and his body is in a chair. And the young lovers are literally 2 seconds from finding that body. So that the happy ending is, it was just, again, 2 seconds longer to wildly change. And I love that idea. As perverse as that is, it was like, I have to have this in the movie. So that's why we see John's body. So there you go. A play for Bill. In March of last year, Ron, Dr. Owen, went to LA for a movie event and found Judy Garland's mausoleum place, or whatever you call where your body or ashes.
Yeah, it's a pavilion.
Yeah.
You can be buried with her, FYI.
Oh.
Don't judge me.
So, and again, because of the reflection, it's hard to read, but the epitaph reads, I'll come to you smiling through the years. So, if you didn't believe that this was a gay play before, thank you. So I forgot to mention, so now we have some time for questions about the project, about any of the research, about what we have going on here at Gerber Hart. So. Or not. Yes?
Did you look at marginal waters at all? Like some of what you were talking about, and how do you photograph like the project you were doing and your one of the subjects passed away? I know we have a copy of, and I can't remember the artist's name, of Marginal Waters that was done at the Belmont Rocks here to try to preserve queer men during the AIDS crisis in Chicago.
Yeah, I did not, but I do have another series, one of my next projects, that's more specifically about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes.
Yeah, the
That's
pictures
not
here
Owens,
are
is it?
incredible. What?
Is that Owen's book?
No,
Okay,
no. He may have referenced it, and that may be
okay.
how I learned about it. But
Yeah.
I know we do have a copy here in our special collections, and the images are incredible, but is that this sense of like trying to preserve this history before it's washed away?
Yeah, no, I'll check it out again. Perfect for this next project.
What is the next project?
Well, one is I also have some books that I've been doing. So it is a series of shorter personal remembrances of my experiences during the AIDS crisis. Again, completely wrapped up in survivor's guilt, but also the weird social things that were happening at the time. So, yeah. Yes?
I'm curious if you looked at city art as critical evaluations and looking through each of it. Some of what I was all back to is the work she specifically was working on stories of slaves on the transatlantic passage. I think like what do we do with this? A name and a law somewhere, right? And that's all we have. How do we like fictionalize into these stories? I think we're doing a lot of that.
Yeah.
Obviously very different, but in some ways, you know, the stories of the effects and those are lost.
Yeah, and it's there's a burden that comes with that. To tell a story that is, if not true to fact, like because we have to make up so much, but that is true to the spirit, but that is also respectful of those who've died. So, yeah, it's a thing we have to watch for all the time with these.
She also, just to go off Lydia's point, Cydia Hartman did Wayward Lives, Beautiful Experiments, and it's this beautiful look at what records you can find in the archive and then imagining a full history for
Yes.
people that have very little that are left behind in an official archive. And it's really, really beautiful.
One thing that I am very much, as I was going through this presentation and remembering resources, so actually, Galit here, former classmate, we were in a fantastic seminar with Sean Michelle Smith, photo historian at SAIC, chair of the Visual Critical Studies Department. And we were doing a lot with examining photo albums and the presentation of images of formerly enslaved peoples and black families as essentially defining, there's a huge range of that, but it made me an amazing deep research and in that. But we really don't have that for LGBTQ folks. That academic writing really hasn't been developed, in part because it's such a mystery. Like most of the work these days are things like My Buddy, books where people have found the images and they are publishing them, but that the social meaning of what that is has not really been dealt with in depth yet. Again, the secrecy, again, that need for the Polaroids, but the relationship to families and how they preserve them themselves. A lot of these men had photo albums that we find, but we don't find any other information. Steve Shore, did I get his last name right?
Steve Starr.
Steve Starr.
Yes.
Surely a pseudonym. We mainly have, if we're lucky, we find the albums and the pictures, but then we have to go and decode, again, through cakes and things like that, what this actual story was. But I think there's a really good opportunity for research and academic writing about the LGBTQ photos in that regard. Yes?
Have you thought of sharing your project with anyone in Abilene?
I have. And then the second thought is, oh God, they would hate this. But, yes. Surely there's fun. I didn't talk about it, but Abilene is a very unfriendly town for gays. But it's worth a shot, right? I mean, the worst they can do is say no. But like one time when I was there photographing, happened to coincidentally be during Pride Week. And as I'm driving around town a lot, it's still a very small town. It takes literally maybe 15 minutes to go from the eastern edge to the western edge. Maybe. There's nobody around. But did not see a single Pride sticker anywhere, including the most liberal of corporate spaces like Starbucks. And it took me there's like, wait, what's missing here? Oh, it's just kind of wiped. But to your point, again, all I can do is say no. So Chamber of Commerce, there's a historical society, things like that. All right. Anyone else? We have taken up pretty much the entire hour at this point. Again, if you can, please donate. We'll be around for another 20 minutes. If you have any questions about the exhibit itself or something you want to share offline with me, happy to take any questions offline.
Thanks, Hal.